Hey guys, Final Death Star here, and today we're talking George Lucas's possible plan for how his new set of movies could have gone had he been in control of Lucasfilm. So this news was breaking from a companion book that was released with James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction series on AMC. And this is what George had to say. The next 3 Star Wars films were going to get into the microbiotic world. But there's this world of creatures that operate differently than we do. I call them the Wills. And the Wills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off the Force. If I'd had held on to the company, I could have done it. And it would have been done. Of course, a lot of the fans would have hated it. Just like they did Phantom Menace and everything. But at least the whole story from beginning to end would be told. Now, this isn't the first time that we've heard the name The Wills. They actually pop up in the last 3 episodes of Star Wars The Clone Wars, where Yoda goes on a voyage to find out more about the living Force after having a connection to Qui-gon. And in his journey, he encounters these priestesses, which they call the Wills, which is a very interesting concept. Qui-gon was the first one to, as far as we know, was the first one to be able to transcend or become one with the living Force and still have a connection to the living world. So he was able to still communicate with Yoda and possibly eventually Obi-Wan. If they do an Obi-Wan movie, we might find out that indeed is true. In fact, there was a scene that was written for Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, where Qui-Gon actually communicates as a Force ghost with Yoda and tells him the path to eternal consciousness is a secret and a mystery of the Wills. So this idea is not a new idea. In fact, it goes farther than that. It traces back to the original drafts of Star Wars itself, A New Hope. The original story of Star Wars was supposed to be told from the Journal of the Wills, and the Wills really were the Force. He thought that was a little too complicated and thought it would be easier just to call it the Force. So the idea of these Wills really does trace back to the original idea of Star Wars. So I can see where he would want to kind of bring everything together and go back into that idea of the living Force being literally living creatures, a living Force. Now, he sort of skirted around the idea in A Phantom Menace, where he talked about the midichlorians. Qui-Gon explains to Shmi Skywalker, Anakin's mother, about his ability in the Force and how it basically boils down to how many midichlorians are in the blood count, and it got a little too biological and a little boring. Had he gone into a little more of the living Force, the Wills, I think it could have been interesting, because it definitely made for a great few episodes of the Clone Wars to delve deeper into the Force itself, but not from a biological standpoint, from more of this metaphysical standpoint. So it could have been a good idea. It could have been interesting to see where he would have gone. It is kind of funny that he says, there would be a large number of fans that didn't like the movie. That's kind of like Rian Johnson saying that, I make a film that 50% of the audience loves, 50% of it hates, and then I'm satisfied with that's the kind of movie I want to make. Do you really want to make a movie that's going to divide and anger half of your audience? I don't know. I think maybe George is a little sensitive to it because of everything he went through with the prequels, the backlash and the verbal bashing of those films. But it might have been an interesting idea. You could have brought back Qui-Gon Jinn, you could bring back Yoda, you could bring back Obi-Wan Kenobi, all of them in the ether world of the Force to kind of get into more of what the Force is and the Wills and how they control the Force. It would have been a very fascinating story if done right. Now, they did sort of do it right with Clone Wars, and that is because Dave Filoni, I think, had a lot to do with that as well. Him and George Lucas working hand in hand, sort of the master storytellers, they collaborate fantastically together. I think if Lucas was going to continue to make these movies, had he not sold the company, knowing that they had the history, that they had worked on Clone Wars, that they had got into the Wills, possibly he could have brought in Dave Filoni to help him with the movies and help him with the story connectivity of everything. And had he done that, I think that could have only gone to enhance the films. So at first glance, you might read that and say, "Oh my gosh, I don't want more metachlorians." And what is this craziness, a microbiotic world? And if it was going to be kind of microbiotic and just dealing with, I don't want to see a science class as a Star Wars movie. But had they done something like Clone Wars and possibly have Dave Filoni involved with George developing the story at least, it would have been interesting to see where that could have gone. I don't know if it could have been worse than Last Jedi, so I might be on board for that. It'd be definitely interesting. So what do you guys think? Would you have wanted to see a storyline that dealt more on the nature of the Force and who these Wills characters are, to see George Lucas's take on how this trilogy could have gone? Or are you satisfied with the sort of more standard storyline that we're getting with the movies that are coming out right now by Disney? I would love to know down in the comments below. If you did like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more content. And until next time, lock the doors and hope they don't have blasters.